name is Josh Christensen. I am a cloud architect here at Jellicos, and today I'm going to explain a little bit about permissions boundaries and how they are utilized in the Jellicos account and how they can improve the security of your IAM users. So first off, I'd like to mention that permissions boundaries do not grant any access. They do limit the maximum permissions that a user or a principal may have. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign in here. I have created a test account with a IAM user named administrator who does have full admin access. So I'm going to go to my IAM users here and show you what's currently set for that administrator user. He's in a group named administrators and he has administrator access. He does not have a boundary currently set. I previously had created these permission boundaries policies, but I will show you the JSON for that a little bit later. So I'm going to go ahead and attach his permissions boundary right now, and we'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. So I created two. One is for an end user and one is for maybe an admin. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to go ahead and select the IAM creation boundary, and I'll explain a little bit more about how that's going to work. So I've attached the boundary. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. If I'm looking at it from an admin's perspective, now that it's been attached, you can see a little bit more about how it's going to work. You can see that it's going to deny any create user actions if they do not have this permissions boundary set, which is an end user permissions boundary, preventing me from creating any users without having a boundary set for them. It's also going to deny any options or actions that may result in modification of either of these boundaries. The issue becomes with an administrator is that they typically have the ability to change what these policies do. With this deny, that administrator won't be able to change their policies, so they won't be able to grant themselves some full admin access or not be able to create a user with an end user permissions boundary attached to them. And it's also going to prevent any delete of that boundary. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and show an example of me attempting to create a user. I am still logged in as the administrator, and I'm going to go ahead and add user. I'm going to name this end user. We're going to give him console access with an auto-generated password. I don't need to change my password for this. I can add the user to a group, and I'm just going to add him to the administrators group. Now keep in mind that this is an end user and I don't need to add him to the administrators group, and nor should he be. So I'm going to go ahead and try to create user. I'll get a denied action that I'm unauthorized to do that. And with being a full admin, that deny is coming from the permissions boundary. So if I go back, I can still add him, attach some policies to him directly. So if I try to add administrator access directly to him, I'm also denied. So what I need to do is I can still grant him administrator access, but I'll have to use a boundary, the end user boundary, which will limit that administrator access. So I'm going to filter my policies, customer managed, it's not used currently. And you can see my end user policy. And I'm going to go ahead and create my user. And I'm now able to create my user successfully. So I'm going to go ahead and take this password, paste it off screen here. for future use, as we'll log in with that user. So as the administrator, let's say I don't want to have that permissions boundary attached to me anymore. I want to be able to create an admin user without any problems. So I can try to say remove policy or remove boundary. Once again, that boundary itself is denying me the ability to remove it. So you can control that. Maybe you have a root user, but you want to have this boundary attached to every admin user. So as soon as you create your first initial IAM user, you can attach that boundary and it won't go away. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open an incognito window here, and I'm going to go ahead and test my login with my end user and see what happens. Paste my password in there. So now in the management console, and remember I am an admin user. So in here, part of that policy, and I can go back and show you, is denying an end user the ability to change anything with any other users or even modify them. So I can click on my administrator user, but I don't have permissions to any of those functions. I can't set any security credentials or anything like that. As my end user, as we typically have a MFA requirement, so I've granted this user the ability to possibly set up their MFA device. They can also manage their password. They can create access keys. But they do have limited actions and limited abilities for themselves as well, so they can't remove their boundary. They can't. They can change their access here. I'm sorry, they cannot change their access there through that policy as well. So despite being in the administrators group, the permissions boundary is limiting the ability of what my end user can do. So I'm going to go back and look at that end user permissions boundary. So you can see some of the allow effects that are set in there, but those don't explicitly allow anything. The user has to be granted those from their policy, their IAM policy, from their permissions policy. Apologies. So right here, we're allowing only this information for IAM, and the only caveat is that it has to match the resource of that user. So many of those functions are denied because he does not have the ability to change anything for any other user. They're not explicitly denied in here. This is just setting the limitation of what actions he can actually perform in IAM, despite the fact that his administrator access grants him full admin access. He can't do anything unless it's his user. So as you can see, permissions boundaries are great to limit some of those IAM user actions that you don't want maybe an IAM an administrator or another end user to go in there and make a mistake, but still grant them the access they need to do their job. And it makes it a great way to control some of that user's ability to remove some of the policies. So typically we have an MFA multi-factor policy that requires you to set up a multi-factor device prior to having access to anything other than that. An administrator could potentially remove that, but if you set an IAM boundary to prevent that administrator from removing that policy and removing that boundary, then you can control and make sure that those users do have that MFA policy in place.